Okay, so now this next section is all trig. This acronym here is to help you set it up. I tend to like, sorry, right here. I tend to like this setup a little better. Your S, your sign, let me change that. S for sine is when your O is over H. C for cosine is when A is over H. And T for tangent is when O is over A. So on this first part of your questions, it's just checking, can you come up with the ratio, the fraction? So we want the fraction right here. And can we write the fraction as a decimal? So on 19 here, they want us to do the sine of A. So we always circle our reference angle, which is A. We're all comparing A in these problems. And we label our parts. If I go look across, this 12 would be the opposite side. Anything including with the angle that's right next to would be the adjacent side. I'm just abbreviating. And always opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. So if I'm doing sine of A, that is 12 over 13. And then the decimal form, that means you're just putting this, okay, let me make this a little bit bigger. You're just doing 12 divided by 15. I said 14, I apologize for that. Is it 12? 12 divided by 13, sorry. 12 divided by 13. And then we're writing to the nearest hundredths. So that is 2 decimal places. So you look at the 2, but you look to the right of that digit to determine if you're rounding up or staying. Since there's a 3, it's staying. So this would be 0.92. All right, so if I'm doing cosine of angle A, that's adjacent. The adjacent side is a 5 over hypotenuse, which is the 13. And then we're writing that as a decimal to the nearest hundredths. So that would be 0.38. For tangent of A, that's opposite over adjacent. Opposite is 12, adjacent over 5. So adjacent is 5. And then S as the decimal is actually 2.4. So the first part of your assessment is just can you come up with the ratio? And can you simplify if necessary? Then here we're going to ask you to determine the angle. Which angle is A? When they say which angle is A, they're asking, is it angle 1 or is it angle 2 here? So if I know I'm looking at cosine of A is 8 over 17, that means I'm doing the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, we know 17 is always the hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle right there. So I need to do adjacent. So if I'm looking at adjacent, the angle that's adjacent to 8 here, that would have to be angle 1. And then here, if I'm doing tangent of A, and tangent is opposite over adjacent, well, who's opposite angle 8? That's angle 2. So you're going to have to, I guess a little hint here for these type of problems is you're going to need to work backwards. Okay. Now for a situation here on 22, the sine of A, sine is when we're looking at opposite over hypotenuse. We already know 17 is the hypotenuse. So I'm asking myself, is 8 over 17 this decimal? Meaning it's either got to be 8 or 15. So if I do 8 divided by 17, I don't get the same decimal. So if I do 15 divided by 17, I do get the same decimal. So 15 has to be the opposite side. So 15 over 7. So if 15 is the opposite side, I look across, that means this has to be angle 1. All right, so now we're getting into solving. So when we want you to solve, we're going to check that you know which operation to use. If it's a side, we're rounding to the nearest tenth. And if it's an angle, to the nearest degree. That means a whole number. We're not doing nearest degree. So if I give you the equation, we want to set it up like a proportion, put it over 1 so that we can cross multiply. And here, if we can remember, your shortcut is if the variable is on the top of the ratio, you just multiply to get your answer. So this is, you have to get it to calculate already. So you have to get to here. I know not everyone has a calculator. And then you're ready just to type it in. We're doing 19 times the tangent of 56. Okay. So rounding to the nearest tenth, the one decimal place, so this is 28.2. Now on 24 here, I can put it over 1, but a shortcut is realizing that this x is on the bottom. And when it's ever on the bottom, the variable's on the bottom, you're just going to divide, or switch and divide. Sorry. It's on the bottom. Switch and divide. Sorry about that. Sorry. And divide. So I'm switching these x and... Oh man, this thing is crazy. Switching the x and the trig function here. So really when I'm writing it, my x is equal to 25 divided by over cosine of 19. And that's what we're putting in the calculator to solve. So I'm doing 25 divided by cosine and then 19. Round to the nearest tenth, that's 26.4. So we go from there to now you having to come up with the trig ratio, choosing the correct trig ratio by labeling. So on 25, always start out, circle the angle. 14 would be the opposite side. I'm just going to put an O there. And X is the adjacent side. This, since I have an O and A, is tangent. So tangent of 28 equals opposite over adjacent. X is on the bottom, just like the previous one we just talked about. You switch them and you divide. Now on problem like 26, the angle is to 28. X is the adjacent. 15 is the adjacent. X is the hypotenuse. Sorry about that. If I have an A and an H, that is cosine. So this is in cosine of 28 equals adjacent. That's the 15 over hypotenuse. Again, the variable's on the bottom, so we divide when that happens. So we're doing 15 divided by the cosine of 28. Okay. So on a problem, excuse me, on like number 8 here, 28. I want you to find AC. So I'm going to just put a variable x there, and that is the hypotenuse. 46 the angle, and 19.2 is actually adjacent to that angle. So now we choose the trig function. Hopefully we're choosing cosine. You just set it up and then solve. Pay attention to where your variable is to determine how to solve it. If the variable is on top, you multiply to solve. If it's on bottom, you divide to solve. And if it's inside the triangle, if it's an angle, you do the inverse to solve. So on a multi-step here on number 29, we need to start with the 39 degrees and 38 is the adjacent side. I need to get to the shared side here, this missing measurement here, so I can get to my x. So I'm just going to relabel this as y. And if I do that, I can now see this is my opposite side and my adjacent. So I can start off with doing tangent of 39 equals opposite y over adjacent. And here the variable's on top. So I multiply to get to the answer. 38 times the tangent of 39. So we're going to round to the nearest 10 here. That's going to be our 30.8 here. So I'm going to say my y is approximately 30.8. So that lets me know that I can replace this variable with that side measure. And I can use that to find my x. This is still the opposite side and x is the hypotenuse. So when we have O and H, we're using sine. So I could do sine of 60 equals the 30.8 over the x. Now here, x is on the bottom, so to solve, we're going to divide by the sine of 60. And we get 35.6. Okay, 35.6. Oops, sorry, we don't need that. So when I was talking about if x is the inverse, it's kind of like for 31 and 32 here. On 32, if I was going to do 32, since I have all three sides, I can decide which two I want to use. Let's say I want to use just the opposite and the hypotenuse, O and the H. That's sine. So sine of x equals 6 over 10. And x is what we're trying to find. So now we do the sine inverse. That's that -1, 6 over 10. So we put that in the calculator, and we round to the nearest whole number here. So get it right here. Second sine, get that -1, 6 divided by 10, enter. So this is going to be 37 degrees. Okay. All right, so then from giving you the triangle and you labeling the parts and choosing the trig function, then we're going to ask you to understand angle of elevation and angle of depression. If it's elevation, then it's the angle, both angles are formed with the horizontal line, but it's the angle above the horizontal line. I'm just going to abbreviate that horizontal line. Now, if I'm talking angle of depression, it's the angle below the horizontal line. So you do need to know your vocab to identify on a diagram. It's going to be similar to what I'm having here. I'll give you the picture, give you the angles numbered. You have to tell me which type of angle is shown. So angle 3 here is 3 is below this dotted line, so this is depression. Angle 1 is also below the dotted line. It's depression. 4 is above the dotted line. Okay, so that's elevation. And 2 is also elevation. All right, so the remainder here is just, can we label? This is our 5 steps with trig word problems. So we have to draw a diagram. Some of the diagrams won't be drawn for you. You just maybe have to label, like on number 37. We have to label the diagram. So what they have here in this diagram, we have a 17-foot pole. So this represents our pole. Okay. This whole thing is 17 feet. So the wire is 20 feet long and it attaches to the pole, and it is 15 feet from the base of the pole. So we started with the wire. This is our wire. So that's our 20. So the goal is to get to a right triangle. So that's the hypotenuse. And then we have here, it says it's 15 feet from the base of the pole. That would be here in the horizontal. They want us to find the angle. What angle does the wire make with the ground? So the ground is on the bottom here. So that I would put the X with that horizontal line, above the horizontal line. And that means we are circling this angle. And we don't want to do opposite, because the pole for the triangle, this is the size of the triangle. And the pole goes past that. So we don't want to do opposite. What we want to do is adjacent and hypotenuse, which is cosine. So we're doing cosine of cosine of x equals 15 adjacent over hypotenuse. And since x is the angle we're trying to find, this is when we have to do the inverse. So we have to do second cosine to get that inverse symbol. 15 divided by 20, and then round to the nearest whole degree, so that's just 41. Now for a scenario on 38, it's partly kind of drawn, but we have to label, and it's okay. The radius must angle the ray to the tumor if the tumor is 6.3 below the skin. So this represents the skin here, this little tube. So the 6.3 would be here. Okay. The ray enters the body 9.8 centimeters to the right of the tumor. Okay. So that would be here. And then it says, find the angle the ray should enter the body. So that angle is here with the horizontal line. I mean, there. Okay, that's better. So hopefully that helps you pick the correct trig function. The last two, you have to draw the picture. So the goal is to eventually form a right triangle so we can use trig. On this, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the light tower. Okay. It booms out. Goes in the circle. This doesn't look like a very good drawing, but this vertical would be my height, which is 105. What we have is a boat out on the water, and we know that angle of depression. So if I'm looking down to that boat, it's 37 degrees. Well, depression is below a horizontal line, so you have to kind of think of an imaginary horizontal line right here. But if you remember, all angles of depression, I'm going to abbreviate that. Maybe not. There we go. Equal angles of elevation. So if I turn this into a right triangle, boom, there, these two angles are congruent. So I can put the 37 with the horizontal line here. And we're trying to find the distance between the base of the lighthouse and the boat. So we're trying to find this distance. Put an X right there. So what we have is opposite and adjacent. So that is tangent. So let's see if you can finish these word problems. This is due tomorrow. Make sure also to study. I posted on Teams some flashcards. This looks very. But if you just go to your class and look for your general statement, this is also the link for your trig functions for your TI to do your calculator. But if you click on the link there, either way. So, oops, sorry. So here's like a question. In 30, 60, 90, I'm going from hypotenuse to short leg, you will hypotenuse to short leg, and then you click to reveal it. If you said divide by 2, you got it right. So if you did not get it right, I think you can mark it to study again. I think this is it. I can't remember, sorry. But this kind of, in this triangle, I've been given a leg. So to find the other leg, what will you do? I will, and then just click. That's the picture. Use the same leg for the second. Okay, the legs are the same. What side is opposite the triangle? So this just makes sure you understand the part. So I would definitely use this to help you study. All right. Thanks, guys.